Hey, Pretty Girl Club. I want to talk about inferiority complexes, what they are, and how to overcome them. So, this is going to be kind of like a story time video in a way. I'm going to talk about my experiences with all these different inferiority complexes that I could have carried into adulthood, but I was able to, I guess, not carry them into adulthood. But first, let's start off by talking about what causes inferiority complexes. Things like trauma, depression, and negative self talk, even genetics, or having parents or close family members with related mental health conditions, avoidant personality disorder, and borderline personality disorder. So let's start with the first thing, which is trauma. A question you may want to ask yourself is, do I have any trauma related to either my race, my skin tone, my hair texture? So believe it or not, yes, I have trauma related to all of those things, or I did in the past. So when I was younger, I remember, so I have type 3 hair. I remember being at a black hair salon, and the hairstylist, she happened to be unambiguous. This was in the early 2000s, okay? So this is when relaxers were like a thing. I always had very long hair. It eventually got burned off with relaxer, but I remember I had type 3 hair and I was at the hair salon and she had just got done washing my hair. And I remember when I sat in the chair, I was looking in the mirror and I saw my hair was curly and stuff. By the way, growing up, for the most part, I kind of wore my hair straight, like straightened, kind of like natural. I didn't really do my hair at home. My mom would get my hair done. My mom has a different hair type than me. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to wear my hair down when I was like 12. I would say age 12 to like 18, I just wanted my hair to be down and straight because that was more of the style back then. But I remember looking in the mirror and I actually liked my hair. I liked how my hair looked when it was curly. It kind of reminded me, I remember thinking at the time, like, oh, it's kind of like Spanish hair or something. I know that's an ignorant thing to think, but I was literally like a preteen. So I remember thinking that. And I literally asked the hairstylist, I was like, oh, can't I just wear my hair natural? Like, you just put something in it, like some cream or something, and I just wear it curly. And she was like, and she was wincing, kind of like, making it like, oh, you're kind of teetering on the edge of nappy, basically. She didn't say that, but she was looking at my hair. She was like, I don't know if your hair is going to stay curly. It might end up getting frizzy. She started naming off all of these different reasons as to why my hair would not be able to look like how it looked that moment when I was sitting in the chair, just natural. So she started kind of convincing me in a way that I needed to straighten it or that I didn't have the type of hair that I could just wear curly. So I actually do consider that to be a form of trauma because when I was growing up, she was someone that I kind of looked up to because she was friends with my auntie. She was like in her 20s, mid 20s or something, and I was like 12 or 13. So this was the same hairstylist that would actually compare me. And I'm not even saying that she had bad intentions. I think part of it was really just her background. I don't even think that she was like an evil person or anything, but she used to also compare me to other women, like other models and stuff. So when I was a teenager, that was when I first got into modeling. That was when I first was like trying out for different things. And I remember that was when America's Next Top Model was on. And so she would always have it on in the salon and she would compare me to like Beyonce or Tyra or one of the models on the show. And she wouldn't say like, oh, you suck compared to them. But she would basically be like, oh, look at them. They're out living their dreams. Like they're out doing modeling. Oh, she's really making it big now. How's your modeling going? I mean, if you want something, you have to go for it. And that was actually a form of trauma for me at that time because that kind of started an inferiority complex in terms of my socioeconomic status. And that ended up being kind of one of the main triggers because a part of why I was not able to consistently do like modeling stuff is because so I'm tall. So when I was about 13, around puberty age, I would grow. I was growing so fast, like getting taller and taller and taller and like hitting puberty. I was getting little boobs and hips. And so I had to upgrade my modeling pictures. You can't go into the modeling. And by the way, this is back when like agencies were a thing. So I was with this agency and like you have to upgrade your pictures and kind of keep them up to date. So it eventually got to the point to where I couldn't keep paying. Like basically my mom would have had to get a photographer or like pay to get a photographer because I had to keep on updating my pictures. Also, with me missing school and my mom missing work to take me to like these different go-sees and stuff like that. Basically, it was a money thing. The money was a part of the reason why I could not pursue modeling as much as I wanted to when I was young, because I was depending on my mom, to like drive me there and everything. And so having that hairstylist make comments about my type 3 hair texture, meanwhile, she was unambiguous with 4C hair. So I found it interesting, though, that a woman who is black would make those types of comments. But like I said, I don't necessarily think she was trying to be evil, but though those were small forms of traumas. So I call them micro traumas. It's similar to microaggression. So it's like, even though it's not this really big dramatic thing, if you keep having dozens or hundreds of those little teeny tiny experiences, eventually it is going to build up. And so that I could have ended up having an entire inferiority complex when it came to my hair texture, type 3 hair. So anyway, when I was in puberty age, all the way up until 18, from around 12-ish to 18, you guys know that I grew up around like white people as far as my hometown, my school. I went to private schools my whole life. So think of like Gossip Girl, like that type of school environment. So I wanted my hair to be straight anyway. So I was wearing my hair straight all the way up through like high school for the most part. So junior high, I would wear it curly sometimes, but then once the hairstylist kind of like discouraged it, then I was like, okay, well maybe wearing it straight and silky is better, I guess, because that's quote unquote the good hair. Because people would say that I have the good hair, but they would mainly say it after my hair was pressed, like after it was silky straight, because she could straighten it so straight to where it looks like an Indian person or an Asian person, like the weave hair. I actually did not embrace my natural hair texture to the point where I had never done my natural hair really as a teenager. For the most part, I kind of got it done at salons and stuff. Sometimes I would put it in a little hair clip or something. I didn't really embrace it. But what helped me to overcome it was learning about my actual background, learning about my ancestry. So in terms of inferiority complexes about hair texture, thankfully, I went to an HBCU, and this was right at the very beginning of the natural hair movement. So this is when mixed chicks came out. Actually, I remember hearing about mixed chicks in high school because there was one lady there, and she had like 2 biracial kids, and they were a few years younger than me. And she was like, oh, maybe your daughter, she told my mom, she was like, oh, maybe she can try mixed chicks. And so I had just heard about mixed chicks. That this was also when Miss Jessie's came out. So Miss Jessie's, Mixed Chicks, all of those like curly hair products and all of those brands started gaining popularity. Like Shea Moisture, oh my gosh, the coconut hibiscus shampoo, that is my shit. That is still my shit to this day, actually. But anyway, so what helped me to overcome it was actually getting more information and getting more knowledge, because a part of why I was feeling self-conscious about my hair texture in comparison to white girls and stuff was because I did not have enough information about my particular hair texture. And also, the unambiguous hairstylist recommended that I get a relaxer. So oh my God, I did not need a fucking relaxer. My hair is literally like, it's naturally fine, first of all. And then I would say the tightness of my curl, it's maybe a 3B at best. And so to recommend a relaxer is just crazy to me, but this was also the early 2000s, so who knows. But anyway, so I kept getting these relaxers, and she was over processing my hair and like overlapping it, putting way too much heat on my hair to where my hair is just it's not created to do that. So my hair started gradually falling out. It started getting thinner. It went from being super thick and like naturally very, very long to gradually becoming shorter and shorter. And I was not doing anything to it really. And she was like, okay, like try these oils, put this oil on your hair. And I remember putting the oil on my hair every single night. I put this little Cara Care oil on there. I do like Cara Care as a brand, but I was putting that oil on it every single night. I was wearing the little bonnet thing like she told me to, but it still gradually was like falling out. And looking back, it's because it was just over processed and very damaged and stuff. Like I think that the relaxer was probably too strong. You know how they have like the texturizer and then it kind of goes up, like they have the mild relaxer and then they have like a super relaxer. I don't know what kind of relaxer was on my head, but it had to have been like some sort of super relaxer or something because nothing was working no matter what I did, no matter how much oil I put on my hair, it was still gradually just thinning and shedding and just breaking. So that obviously caused me to have insecurity. But the way that I was able to overcome that was to, number one, stop listening to negative voices. So, unfortunately, that hairstylist ended up being a negative voice, not to mention the fact that she was very scissor happy. So, I've noticed that, like in the black community when I was growing up, anytime there was a problem with your hair, cut it off. Curl pattern is not matching, cut it off. You just got to relax or cut it off. You want it to grow faster, cut it off. It's Tuesday, cut it off. Like literally, no matter what, I was constantly getting my hair chopped and chopped and chopped. And so I felt like it was stagnant as far as growth goes. And I had always been a girl that had naturally very long hair. Like I never had any sort of problem. Even to this day, I still don't have any sort of problem like growing my hair or retaining length. But part of it was because I kept going to these salons. And also another thing that caused me trauma, which could have led to an inferiority complex, was they liked my hair so much to the point where they wanted to play in my fucking hair. So I remember being taken to like a beauty school. They were like, "Oh, we need models and like people who where they can kind of like test their hair, and we need someone with quote unquote black hair." So I was the closest thing to having the quote unquote black hair, and so I got picked by this beauty school. These were friends of the unambiguous hairstylist. So I went to this beauty school thing and they were learning how to do relaxers. So looking back, that was probably another contributing factor into fucking up my hair because I remember my hair starting to burn and I didn't really know back then because I was maybe like 13 or something. So I didn't really realize it, but I was like, oh my God, my head is just on fire. And I remember feeling like, wow, like this sucks. But all of those different things, like having people kind of playing in my hair and experimenting with my hair, and then it's like different bad things are happening to it, that made me feel a sense of trauma. So that is a factor that is linked to an inferiority complex. But the way that I was able to kind of overcome that later on was by, first of all, taking the power back into my own hands. And so learning how to do my own hair instead of paying money or like going and having other people experimenting on my hair, I learned how to experiment on my own hair. And by the way, this tactic works for overcoming any inferiority complex. So let's say you have a complex about your skin tone. I remember I did the same thing with my skin tone, experimenting with my skin tone, learning about it. Okay, what are my undertones? What is my foundation shade? What colors look good against my skin tone? How can I make sure that I'm kind of like enhancing my skin? And even the care, like learning how to care for my skin, same thing. I remember I had so many trial and error situations when it came to skincare. So I would try to make little face masks at home. Sometimes the face mask would not work. I remember one time I put like potato juice on my face. I don't know why I did that, but like I just saw it on one of those beauty blogs. This is back before YouTube was like a thing. So I remember reading this blog and they were like, if you put like potatoes on your face, it helps to like clean everything. It just kind of naturally brightens and smooths the skin. And I was like, okay, cool. I literally broke out in hives. I got hives on my fucking face. And I remember I was like crying because I was so upset. And then my mom came home and like my whole face was puffy because of me crying and also because of freaking hives. So that was a trauma. And one thing I've learned though is that if you have some sort of inferiority complexes, you are going to have to overcome those traumas when it comes to experimenting with yourself or like figuring out what look works for you. Because yes, I had some trial and error when it came to my hair or when it came to caring for my skin. To this day, I still cannot use facial cleansers. I don't know why. My skin just does not like any sort of facial cleanser, any sort of gel cleanser, basically anything that I purchase from a store in a bottle. My face does not like it. It will dry the crap out of my skin. I've noticed that my face only works with some sort of bar of soap. If it's a bar of soap, it can be any bar of soap from a Dove soap or like some African black soap, aloe vera soap, any sort of soap bar works perfectly, but like the actual gel cleansers, absolutely not. It's going to completely dry my skin out. When I was a teenager, sometimes I would even get blackheads and stuff, but that was all a part of my journey to overcoming that sense of feeling inferior because when I didn't have enough information about how to care for my hair, how to care for my skin, how to nurture it, it caused me to have more of that negative self-talk. So if you look at this chart, it says that factors connected to inferiority complexes are negative self-talk. So I wouldn't have been able to cure the negative self-talk if I hadn't tried to find a way to have a positive experience with my hair or a positive experience with my skin tone. So in my videos where I talk about building your own beauty pedestal, and like I've talked about wearing different bandanas on my hair, different accessories and stuff, all of that, it's not about the accessory. It's not about the bandana. It is about training yourself to attach positive thoughts and positive like emotions towards your hair. So if the best you can do at this time is putting a cute bandana on or putting a cute barrette in your hair, that is actually helping you to overcome an inferiority complex about your hair, or at least that's what it did to me. So one of the things I did when it came to my hair, this is after my hair was broken off, by the way, so I had to cut it. So I had the short haircut. Thank God for Rihanna, because she was like really popping back then. She had the short bob haircut. I have that same phenotype. She has a similar complexion to me and stuff like that. So I was rocking the Rihanna bob, and thank God that that was like popularized. But at that time, when my hair was super short, like cheekbone length, I remember it went from about cheekbone length to like chin length, and I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh. But no, I started learning about like hair clips. It's funny because the hair clips are actually back in style now. Like, you know how you kind of roll your hair in the back and you put that giant French clip in it, or you put like a French roll in your hair. Yeah, so I started doing that and learning about little hair clips. And this is going to sound extremely idiotic, but I was so sheltered and so deeply entrenched in the white community to where I didn't even know about freaking bobby pins until I went to an HBCU. Imagine going like 18 years of your life not knowing about bobby pins and like how amazing they are. So anyway, once I went to an HBCU, there were lots of girls there that had afros and stuff. And that was another thing that helped me to not have an inferiority complex, because remember, anyone can have an inferiority complex. Anyone of any skin tone, hair texture. So I would say that my initial insecurities, it came more from other people projecting onto me. So it didn't so much come from people in the media and stuff, because I've noticed for some women, their inferiority complex and their trauma comes from not seeing women like them in the media, or maybe their parents said something bad to them. So that's another question you want to ask yourself, though, is where did my trauma begin? So if there's anything where I feel like it makes me inferior, whether it's my skin tone, my race, my nose, whatever, where did this trauma begin? Who was the first person to make a negative comment about my nose? Was it my dad? Was it my mother? Was it a child in school? And if it was a family member, like, why did I believe that person? So for example, I told you guys with the unambiguous hairstylist, kind of feeling like my hair is iffy. I had never had an insecurity about my natural hair being iffy, because I thought my hair looked pretty when I looked in the mirror and saw my little 3B, whatever type 3 curls, kind of shiny and like looking cute. So I never had the inferiority complex. It wasn't until a woman that I viewed as being in a position of power, the hairstylist, because she's a professional, she is older than me, she's an adult. I internalized what she said because I viewed her as more powerful than me. So that's another thing to remember about trauma. Oftentimes you internalize insecurities because somebody who you viewed as more powerful than you, they said something negative about you and you internalized it. You believed them because you put that person on some sort of pedestal. So it could have been a parent or a coach or a teacher or a guy. So this is why I say that decentering men is important as well when it comes to overcoming inferiority complexes, because a lot of us have been raised to be very male-centered and we don't even realize it. And so, when a man insults you, it hits different, or it's like more powerful, because if you're male-centered, you put him on a pedestal without realizing it. And a lot of guys know this. This is why they will say, you're a 6, you're not a 10, you're average at best. They'll say that because they know she's male-centered. If I put her down, she's going to internalize it, and that's going to humble her. So that's just a side note. Like, when it comes to your trauma, you want to ask yourself, who was the first person to say that I was ugly? Or who was the first person to introduce this insecurity about my nose? So for me, all it took was that one thing, that one comment about my hair. And then as she kept on comparing me to other women, so basically the difference between me versus like Beyonce and Tyra and all these other models and stuff was their hair. I mean, now I know that obviously they were wigs and weaves, but their hair was like longer and like more perfect looking. So that's kind of how I internalized it at the time. So that's another thing you want to ask yourself is, do I have any micro traumas in regards to my hair, my face, my skin tone? Like for example, did 5 guys in a row tell me that I have a big nose, or was it just my mom or my dad? Was it something that everybody used to say about me? Was it something where, I was known as the girl with the big nose, or did it become a part of my identity? Those are things that you want to identify because it's going to help you to pinpoint exactly who and what caused the trauma, and then you can start kind of working towards overcoming it. So when it came to my hair, though, part of the way that I kind of like embraced it was I started experimenting with all the products, and I started like just trying to learn about different hair accessories and seeing what kinds of hairstyles framed my face. And it's funny because when I was at an HBCU, a lot of the unambiguous girls or girls who had more afro hair than myself, they would try to project their own inferiority complexes onto me. And they would say things like, well, you need to do your hair. You need to straighten it. Your hair can get straighter than that. Why aren't you straightening it? Because I used to like do a blowout, like blow dry it. You know how you can blow dry it and it's all stretched and it looks very afro-y? So I have a picture, I'll put a picture of like Miriam Hampton on the screen because I feel like my hair, it can't, well, her hair is way longer, but I feel like my hair can get kind of like this, where when I blow it out, it does look like more afro textured. But that was another thing, was other people would try to kind of project their inferiority complexes onto me. But by that time, I already had more confidence because I had already been validated for my natural hair. So this is a big one. This is one that a lot of people get wrong. A part of overcoming trauma, in my opinion, a part of overcoming it is going to be receiving positive validation, whether it's just from yourself or also from others. And so if you want to receive positive validation for those qualities about yourself, like the qualities that you may have traumas about, like hair, you're going to have to go out of your way to take a risk and kind of switch it up, kind of like how I did with my hair. Because I remember my very first time ever the first time that I ever did a Bantu knot out. By the way, I freaking love doing Bantu knots. That is my shit. That gives my hair the perfect volume. Like, oh my God, yes. Braid outs, no. Twist outs, no. Bantu knots, yes, because my hair is fine. So the Bantu knots give me a good amount of volume. But anyway, the first time I ever did a Bantu knot out, I was a teenager and I used the Mix Chicks leave-in conditioner. And so I remember doing it, and I had my little razor phone. Remember the flip phones? So I did it, and I took my hair out of the Bantu knots, and I was like, oh my gosh, like it was a shock seeing myself in a different hairstyle, I guess. The best way I can describe it was giving Tracy Ellis Ross. So as far as like hair texture and stuff, and kind of like the poofiness of it. So I remember taking a picture of it, and I sent it to my mom. And in the picture, I was kind of making a funny face, like, what the heck is this? And my mom was like, oh, that's cute. So even though I didn't end up wearing my hair in the Tracy Ellis Ross hairstyle, that was still a form of validation. I would not have received that positive validation had I not taken the risk in the first place to actually show my natural hair, or like my hair in its natural state. And so for a lot of women, they never overcome their inferiority complexes because they never take the time to like try to learn, and they're too scared of errors. So you know how I said you have to learn by trial and error? They're too afraid of the error. And so they never even learn how to do their makeup, how to do their hair, how to, I don't know, get in shape, or like whatever you have the inferiority complex about. So when it came to natural hair days, I did have some bad hair days or whatever. I didn't realize that so my textures, this has always been the case, whether I'm natural or even when I was like relaxed or whatever, I have always had different curl patterns on my head. So that's another misconception about curly hair that I really can't stand. A lot of people assume that like every single hair on your entire head is supposed to be the exact same curl pattern. Like, no, that's not how hair works. So I have had so many people try to tell me like, oh, your hair's damaged. My hair will be perfectly healthy, perfectly natural, no relaxers or anything. And people are like, oh, your hair, it must be damaged because your curls are loose. And it's like, no, some people have tighter curls on the side or in the front, and maybe it's a little looser in the back. That's totally normal. But that was something that I had to get used to, though, about myself, was understanding that, oh, wait, some of the curls have a different pattern. Okay, so maybe on this side of my head, I will put this much gel, and then in the back, I'll put more gel. I just had my own little method of doing it. But ever since my mom basically said my hair looked cute at 16, by the time I hit 18, I was like, okay, I'm going to try this again. I'm going to do this whole going natural thing because all the girls at my HBCU, they're all doing this natural hair thing. They're doing like the Bantu knots, the twist outs, perm rods, flexi rods, you name it, they're doing it. So if they can do it, I'm going to try to do it. So I remember in my dorm, me and a whole bunch of other girls, we all like went natural. By the way, I was natural in college. I was natural all the way until maybe about junior or senior year when I wore a sew-in. And I did that because I was trying to do a protective style, because that was when I learned about protective styling. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to get a sew-in. Anyway, so we all went natural at the same time. And that also helped me to kind of like embrace my natural phenotype and kind of overcome any insecurities. So that's another tip to overcome an inferiority complex, is to go on a journey with other people who are also overcoming those fears. So if you're on a weight loss journey, maybe you have an inferiority complex about your weight. Can you join Weight Watchers? Weight Watchers has a whole, well, actually, no, F Weight Watchers. I don't really like Weight Watchers. But can you join some sort of Facebook group or something where they have other people who are on the same journey as you? And, then you're not going to feel alone, because there are other people who are going through the trial and error of overcoming that insecurity and kind of like seeing a new version of themselves. That was something that I did in terms of hair. I was going natural at the same time as everyone else, and I didn't know about like different hair textures really. I mean, I could see a difference between 4C versus my hair, but all the other ones I had no idea whatsoever. And so it was interesting. I remember noticing like, oh wait, my friend, like my roommate, her hair is in a circle, kind of more like a tree. And I didn't know that that was like the afro shape. I mean, I just didn't have a vocabulary back then in the mid 2000s to like really describe what that was. So I was like, okay, when she does the Bantu knots, her hair is in a circle and my hair is like very flat. It like hangs down by the sides of my face and stuff, or just kind of hangs down my shoulders. But even recognizing the differences about my hair, and then kind of like feeling special if somebody would give me a positive kind of word of encouragement or something, those things actually helped me to overcome those former traumas. So I remember there was one time I was at my HBCU and all of the plugs, like all of the outlets were full, like in the bathroom, all the girls were in there doing their hair. They were all blow drying at the same time and shit, like straightening their hair and all that. So there were no outlets in the bathroom. And so I had no choice but to go into the hallway of my dorm and do my hair and like blow dry it. You know how you have the blow dryer with the comb? So I was doing that in the middle of the hallway. I remember I took my body mirror out of my dorm room and I like put it across the hall from me so that I could kind of see myself in the mirror. And I was blow drying my hair and I was like, oh my God, I hope nobody comes out here. People are probably going to make fun of me because, the last time the hairstylist, she said that my hair was kind of like iffy. And then the last time my hair was blown out, somebody said, you need to do your hair. So I wonder how this is going to turn out. I remember having kind of these thoughts about it and like insecurities basically. And so one girl walked out, she ended up walking out and I was like, oh crap. And then I just kind of stopped blow drying my hair and like looked at her and I was like, yeah, sorry, I'm just blow drying my hair. And she was like, oh my gosh, look at your hair. It looks so soft. And she was like basically complimenting it. So some people might call that texturism. I don't know. She was unambiguous and had 4C hair. So I don't know if she was saying it because she was a texturist or if she was just complimenting me. But I viewed it as she was simply complimenting me because I had been growing out my hair and kind of like taking care of it. So that was another way that I was able to kind of balance out those micro traumas. Because basically what happens is when it comes to feeling inferior, what happens is you have more negative experiences than positive experiences with a particular part of yourself. So if you've been called ugly 500 times and you've only been called pretty 5 times, you are more than likely going to think you're ugly and have an inferiority complex. But if you actually attempt to be pretty, or you start taking risks and start changing things up, then eventually, if you keep working on it, you can balance it out to where you've been called ugly 500 times, but you've also been called pretty 500 times. So it's kind of neutralizing it. So that was one of the strategies that I have used, and I still use that strategy to this day to make sure that I am constantly fighting off any sort of insecurities or inferiority complexes. This works in every area. So I'm only using things like skin tone and hair texture because this channel is focused on women of color. It's focused on multiracial Black women or Black women who are kind of more ambiguous looking. But that's one of the ways that I've been able to kind of gain self-esteem and overcome those traumas, is to get to the point where I have leveled myself up so much to the point where now the compliments far outweigh the negative comments. And looking back, I didn't really have that many negative comments regarding my hair texture in particular. I didn't really have that many negative comments compared to other women. I've never heard anyone specifically talk on YouTube about how many insults they have received, but apparently I was benefiting from privilege my whole life. I didn't know that because I don't compare my traumas to other people's traumas. But that was one of the ways I overcame the inferiority complex about my hair in particular. Another thing that really helped me to have more confidence when it came to hair was the Decentering Men journey. So I told you guys about how I didn't really want to wear wigs and stuff because, I prided myself, or I guess you could say others, kind of they would always comment on my hair, and it's what made me stand out in a way, or it's one of the many things that made me stand out, and people would they would kind of obsess over it and make it a very, very big deal. I started to feel, I kind of want to say almost an inferiority complex in the opposite direction, meaning that if I wear a wig, then it means I'm going to look uglier, or I'm taking away from my beauty versus showing off my long, natural type 3, silky hair or whatever. No one said, oh, if you wear a wig, it's going to look ugly. Nobody had said that. That was something that I kind of assumed because I had heard so many people talk shit about women wearing wigs, or about Black women in particular wearing wigs and weaves and stuff. And so for me, that kind of kept me away from them. And part of this was because I was extremely Christian at the time. So I already had the inferiority complex when it came to beauty in general. I was already scared of my own beauty in the sense that doing all these beauty enhancements were you're trying too hard, or you're trying to draw attention to yourself. You just want to be seen with makeup on. You just want to be seen with a weave. You just want your hair. I've literally heard people make comments if you have the long bust down, or the long wig that goes down to your butt, you're trying to draw attention to your butt, or you're trying to draw attention to your vagina because your hair goes all the way down to your hips, which is kind of near that part between your legs. So I've heard crazy ass comments about long hair in particular. And so that was one of the many reasons that I kind of shied away from wearing wigs and hair pieces and all that. And so I actually would call that an inferiority complex because even though I didn't wear wigs yet, it was still kind of a form of micro trauma because I was male centered and I heard so many men in particular talk shit about wigs. And so it basically scared me off from wearing them. But the way that I overcame that one was by going on a Decentering Men journey, and then I stopped giving an F because I was well, whoever doesn't want to be with me, or whoever thinks I'm quote unquote ugly or ghetto or ratchet for wearing a wig, then that guy is simply not my type. So it did take courage and it took risk for me to be able to overcome these inferiority complexes. And I've noticed that a lot of women stay feeling inferior because they don't want to take a risk. They don't want to risk doing their natural hair and then it looks bad. They don't want to risk going on a date and then they get rejected. They don't want to risk representing their own phenotype and then people call them ugly. And so, but that's bad though, because it keeps you at the bottom. It really does. It keeps you at the bottom in terms of confidence, because confident people take risks. Confident people are not afraid to make money moves or take risks with their beauty, or, kind of push the envelope when it comes to breaking their own beauty barriers. Because I really feel inferiority complex, that's just a fancy way of saying limiting beliefs. You have limiting beliefs about your skin tone. You feel like your skin tone limits you. in terms of marketability or in terms of Hollywood or in terms of desirability, or you feel like your hair texture in its natural state limits you. I just feel like inferiority complex, it's a fancy way of saying that that person has limited beliefs when it comes to that particular thing. And so one reason that I've noticed people can be avoidant if they have inferiority complexes, it's because they don't want to be exposed. They have a lot of shame. They carry a lot of toxic shame. And so they don't want their flaws to be exposed. But they don't understand that if you ever want to have a pedestal of any kind, if you ever want a spotlight of any kind or some sort of confidence, or, if you ever want to be the main character, you're going to have a spotlight. Spotlight means you're no longer in the shadows. So yes, the spotlight is going to be on your flaws. Yes, people are going to notice the inconsistencies in who you are. So it's funny because this channel talks about isms, colorism, texturism, and featureism. And I noticed that once I put the spotlight on hypocrisy, people with inferiority complexes, they start doing that avoidant thing where they want to suddenly avoid the colorism conversation. They want to suddenly avoid the light-skinned perspective, or they want to suddenly avoid talking about the resentful treatment against women who have privileges or women who are perceived as pretty. Avoidance is a part of having an inferiority complex. You want to avoid resistance. You want to take the easy way out. It's really not the easy way out. What you're really doing is just hiding yourself. You're being afraid of your own beauty. You are being afraid of your own power. So a lot of people actually do this. A lot of people are living in their inferiority complexes. I'm actually thinking of people in 9-to-5 jobs where maybe they were scared to start a business. And so, they're kind of living in that inferiority complex. They never started the company. And so he's 55 years old, still making $30,000 a year because he was too scared. He had limiting beliefs when it came to his ability to be an entrepreneur. And so then he projects that onto you. So it's kind of like this cycle. So I really do my best to make sure that I'm constantly fighting against any sort of inferiority complex. I don't care what it is. If it's my hair, my skin, my facial features, all of that. But anyway, I'm probably going to make some more follow-up videos to this. Have you ever had an inferiority complex about anything? Has anyone tried to project their inferiority complexes onto you? And if so, how did you overcome it? Let me know what you think in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.